If you're entering retirement or you're already there, one of the most important questions you'll face is what's the best way to take money out of your accounts? Most people don't realize this, but the order in which you withdraw your money can make or break your retirement plan. It affects how long your money lasts, how much tax you'll pay, and how much flexibility you're going to have along the way. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the best withdrawal strategy we found for most retirees and why it's far better than traditional advice. And make sure you stay until the end. We'll go over a case study that will illustrate how it's possible to take over $100,000 in income in retirement tax-free. And that's not just for 2025, but we can do this year after year while you're in retirement. And before we dive into the video, my name's Ryan Knoll. I'm a certified financial planner and founder of Wealth Partners, a financial planning firm that helps clients nationwide make smart money decisions. Let's jump into the video. Withdrawal strategy isn't just about picking a number and hitting sell on your investments. It's about creating a steady income stream that minimizes taxes, maximizes longevity, and adjusts to life as it changes. If you get this wrong, you'll pay more taxes than necessary, you'll trigger bigger required minimum distributions at age 73 or 75, depending on when you were born, and you're going to lose flexibility in income planning. But if you get this right, you'll have more peace of mind, more options, and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars extra to spend or pass on in your retirement. Now, the most common advice you'll hear on withdrawal strategy isn't terrible advice, but it's also not optimal. It goes something like this. Take money from your taxable brokerage account first, then dip into your traditional bucket, whether that's your 401k or your IRA, and then save your Roth bucket for last. And this sounds good on paper, but it often backfires. And here's why. Your IRA is going to keep growing untouched, and that's going to lead to massive required minimum distributions later on in retirement that will likely force you into higher tax brackets. You'll end up converting fewer dollars to your Roth IRA, which is leaving less tax-free money later on for you or for somebody who will inherit it from you. Your Social Security benefits could be taxed more heavily as you progress through retirement, and Medicare premiums can spike from IRMA surcharge penalties. In short, the tax-efficient sequence you hear most could turn into a tax time bomb. So what's potentially a better strategy? At Wealth, we've come up with a two-part approach that I think works better for most clients. First is we use risk-based guardrails to guide how much you can safely spend in retirement. And the second part of your withdrawal strategy is tax-smart withdrawal sequencing, which reduces your lifetime tax bill. Risk-based guardrails are not a fixed rule like you can only take out 4% of your portfolio balance in a year and adjust it for inflation. They're more dynamic. They update with your age, market performance, and changing goals. They give you a safe monthly amount to spend. They have upper and lower guardrails that show when it's safe to spend more or when we should think about tightening up. And this approach adapts to your retirement in real time. It helps you avoid both underspending and overspending. But let's add in the tax strategy component to this now. In most cases, the ideal order will look something like this. First, you're going to take money from your taxable account. And there are two purposes for starting here. One is to use this money to spend, and the other is to use it to help fund your Roth conversions. Second, we want to take strategic withdrawals from your IRA, but only to fill up low tax brackets like the 10 or 12% buckets. If your taxable account fails to provide you with adequate spending power, this is where you will get some money to live on as well. Third, we want to convert additional dollars from your IRA to your Roth, especially before required minimum distributions kick in. And last, we'll withdraw from your Roth account when needed later in retirement or leave it alone to pass to your heirs. And this approach is going to do a few things for you. It's going to minimize those RMDs. It'll keep more income in lower tax brackets. It'll reduce Social Security taxation and IRMA surcharges. And will grow a large tax-free Roth retirement balance you can use later or leave behind tax-free. And here's the twist. Sometimes you'll be withdrawing from all three buckets in the same year, and that's okay. The key is knowing how much money to take from each so you're minimizing taxes while also providing longevity in your spending plan. Now, before we dive into the best strategy for each bucket, be sure to hit that subscribe button, unless you like a bit more in taxes or not optimizing and making the most of your money. But if you do want more strategies that are going to save you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Let's dive back into the video. So let's talk a little bit about your taxable bucket. And this is your jack of all trades bucket in your overall retirement picture. This is used for spending now or for helping to pay taxes on your Roth conversions. But how do we make this bucket as efficient as possible? Because ideally you've been stocking away hundreds or thousands of dollars a month over your lifetime, and now you have some pretty sizable gains embedded in these positions. So wouldn't realizing these gains cause a taxable event? If you're an unprepared investor, the answer would be a resounding yes. But not you. You've practiced tax loss harvesting diligently over the years, and as a result, you've not only grown your pile of money, you've done it in a way that has mitigated your tax burden as well. And even when you practice efficient tax loss harvesting, you're still likely to have some embedded gains. You want to make sure that those gains don't tip the tax scales out of your favor. So when you're taking distributions from this account in retirement, you want to make sure that you're realizing loss positions first and then using those losses to offset gains elsewhere within the portfolio so you get as close to zero gains or losses realized in a year as possible. And this will do two things. One, it'll limit or eliminate the taxes that you're going to pay now. And two, it'll raise your basis in these positions so that you have smaller paper gains, which will help mitigate future tax burden on future distribution. And that's important. This money will still be invested, but as your basis moves closer to the market value, you will lessen the potential tax burden on distributions. The main reason I bring this up is I often see Roth conversions go awry because investors fail to account for the capital gains implications on the non-qualified bucket. By taking this proactive approach, you are likely limiting not only your ordinary income tax over your lifetime, but capital gains tax in the year you do the conversion. And remember, capital gains tax can be as high as 30 or 35%, depending on how much money you make and where you live. So when it comes to your traditional bucket of money, specifically when you're thinking through the traditional to Roth conversions, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. There's no magic bullet or special number that will always create an optimal outcome. It's different for every person, and it needs to be tailored to your own individual financial plan. There are a few things you want to be cognizant of, though, when you're thinking through these conversions. First is your required minimum distribution. What is it now, and what do you expect it to grow to by the time you hit 75, 85, 90 years old? Second, how much income are you currently taking, and how much do you need? This will allow you to understand how much you're going to pull out in a given year and what you'll have left over to then convert in specified brackets. Third, are you going to trigger Medicare IRMA surcharges by taking out more from this bucket of money? And are those surcharges offsetting any of the potential tax gains you have? These are some of the nuances you want to think through. You also need to be focused on the long term here, and the long term is where the best results are produced. So perhaps it makes sense to fill up to the 24% tax bracket as opposed to just the 22% tax bracket because of how your required minimum distributions are going to grow. Or maybe you're married and one spouse is significantly younger than the other. And I typically would look at a 5-year age gap or more as being the case of significantly younger here. Accelerating distributions while you're in the joint tax bracket might make more sense because you don't want to pass on more money to somebody, or your spouse in this instance, who will be in the single tax filer bracket after you're gone, because it's a little bit more punitive than the joint tax brackets. Next, maybe you want to think about, is paying a few $1,000s a year more in IRMA surcharges worth it? Typically, the answer is yes if your savings over time are tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars by accelerating your distributions. And again, these are just some of the nuances that I help my clients work through. There are many more, and it's imperative that you plan for them. Now let's talk about the final bucket in your financial plan, the Roth bucket. And this is the holy grail of financial planning and investing. A bucket where you have tax-free growth and can take tax-free distributions down the line or leave the money tax-free to someone you care about. Because Roths tend to have the longest shelf life in your financial plan, you should think about being a little bit more aggressive here. Allocating more towards stocks as opposed to bonds should increase your expected return, which just means more tax-free money down the line for you or someone else. If you never plan on touching this money and plan to leave it to someone or something you love, this is even more the case. You can leave them a substantial nest egg by being a bit more aggressive, and they will never pay a dime in ordinary income tax on this money. And if you inherit a Roth IRA, make sure you're staying relatively aggressive and leave that money invested for the full 10 years before the IRS will make you take that money out. This will maximize your return and give you even more tax-free income after you've inherited these funds. I currently have clients that are following the strategy and they're looking to bequeath 7-figure tax-free Roth accounts down the line to people they care about. This is one of the most, if not the most, tax-efficient way to leave someone you love money after you're gone. So now we're going to jump into the case study where I show you how it's possible to take out over $100,000 a year in income and pay absolutely no income tax. We're going to walk through a couple of scenarios where we maximize current income or we maximize for Roth conversions. Just want to show you what's possible for some retirees who are prior to the required minimum distribution age. So let's jump into the case study right now. Okay, so let's walk through a real world example of a married couple. And this is loosely based off of some clients that I've worked with in the past. There's no personally identifying information, but it'll just help you understand that some of the nuance that we work through when trying to get couples as much income as possible completely tax-free. So let's say we have a married couple. The husband's 65 years old and the wife is 64 years old. They need $70,000 a year to live off of. And they're also going to take a standard deduction of $31,600 in 2025. Now, we know that they currently earn $3,500 in interest per year and $6,000 per year in dividends, which is $9,500. So $60,500 short of what they need to live off of in the given year. So we're going to pull that additional $60,500 from their taxable account. So this couple now has two strategies they can take. They can either maximize their income or they can maximize their Roth conversions. So let's think about a strategy where they would maximize their income. So we're going to scroll down here and we'll see here that we're going to think about maximizing income. So what we can do is think about how much money they can pull tax-free before they would have to pay any money in the way of taxes. So if we realize up to $118,500 in income, and we're going to pull this from the brokerage account, they will pay no taxes. Absolutely none. And the way we're finding this out is we know that they're pulling $118,500 in capital gains, but we're moving $31,600 off of that number for their standard deduction. So when we go and we plug in those numbers to both the earned income standpoint, from the earned income standpoint, to see if they pay ordinary income taxes, and then we put them in on the table for capital gains, we know they're going to be at the $96,700 for capital gain standpoint. They're only going to have $3,500 worth of income from ordinary income standpoint. That's the interest that they earn. They're both completely washed away from that standard deduction. So this couple can efficiently move an additional, $50,000, $60,000 in income or capital gains from their portfolio without having to pay taxes on this money. That's huge savings. That's things that they can use to go on a nice trip with their kids and grandkids, or buy a new car, give some money to family who might be going to college, buy a second house, whatever they want to do. They now have tax-free income to do that. So this would be the strategy to maximize income. Now let's talk about a couple who wants to maximize Roth conversions. So the general thought process here is exactly the same, and it's a little bit more nuanced. There's a few more steps. So the first step is they want to convert from their traditional IRA to the Roth $27,100. Okay. And that is just the amount of money that they can move before they're going to hit their standard deduction of $31,600 because of the income they're already taking from interest. So then the next step after that is, how do we maximize from a capital gain standpoint? Now, we know that because they've already taken up everything from an ordinary income tax standpoint, we don't want to pull anything else out that would cause ordinary income taxes. But what we want to do is we want to maximize for the capital gains threshold. Now, remember, the capital gains threshold is $96,700 for capital gains. So this couple, we want to realize an additional $31,200 in cap gains. And this couple in this instance would pay $0 in taxes. So the difference here is they're converting more money and putting into a Roth IRA, so it still has that same tax shelter around it that you would have by utilizing the retirement accounts. We would theoretically pay some money in taxes, but because we're so far below the standard deduction threshold, we're not having to pay anything in the way of taxes for making this conversion. And this couple could still realize another additional $31,200 in capital gains before having to pay income tax. So not only have we increased their income, we've also increased their retirement picture, the likelihood of success in retirement, because we're keeping money under the tax shelter. That money can grow tax-free and then be distributed tax-free whenever they decide to use it in retirement. So this is how you want to think about utilizing conversions. And utilizing these conversions strategically will help you to maximize your tax brackets or your income. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a scenario for this couple as to what they're currently doing, what they currently need to do in order to live their life, which is just maintain that $70,000 a year for spending needs, and see if we can amplify it by following the other two strategies, whether it's maximizing for current income and paying no tax, or maximizing for Roth conversions and paying no tax. So we're going to jump into a different screen here just so I can illustrate this point. So the first thing we're going to look at here is the scenario analysis for the optimal husband and wife. So we're going to take a look all the way on the left-hand side here at this baseline scenario. So we're working in the year 2025, and we know that this couple has nothing being paid to them in the way of wages. They're not working anymore, and they're not collecting Social Security yet because they're making the smart decision to delay Social Security till as late as possible to maximize their benefit. We know that from their bank accounts and CDs that they have at different institutions, they're making about $3,500 a year in taxable interest. We also know that they have total dividends of $6,000, and of those $6,000, $5,000 of the dividends are qualified. The big thing here is qualified dividends are taxed at capital gains tax rates, where non-qualified dividends are taxed as ordinary income tax rates. So we know from their total dividends plus taxable interest, that's $9,500, like we had just mentioned, and we know that they're going to realize $60,500 worth of capital gains from their taxable account. So when we scroll all the way down, we see that they made $70,000 this year. Their standard deduction is $33,200, which is slightly more than I mentioned earlier in the video because I didn't account for the fact that the husband gets a little bit more of a deduction because he's age 65. So their standard deduction is $33,200, which leaves them a taxable income of $36,800. But that $36,800 is all from capital gains. And we know that the upper limit on capital gains to be taxed at 0% is $96,700 for anybody who is married filing jointly. So $36,800, which I'm looking at right here, is below that limit of $96,700. So we know that they're going to pay absolutely nothing in the way of tax. So we're looking at that here at the 0%, at the $0 tax, even though they're finding themselves in the 10% marginal bracket. So we know if they do just what they need to do to get by, they're paying nothing in tax. But what I want to do is I want to optimize. I want to find a way to either get them more income tax free or convert more money to a Roth IRA from their traditional buckets in order to maximize return there as well. So let's walk through a scenario where they want to maximize income. So under the maximizing income scenario, it's the same exact facts as what we had in the baseline scenario in terms of taxable interest, qualified dividends, and total dividends. But what we can do is we can realize an additional almost $60,000 in capital gains. It's literally $59,500 or $900 if I'm doing my math right here of capital gains and still pay no taxes because of that upper threshold being $36,700. So when you look at your standard deduction, first we're going to look at our total income of $129,900, the maximized income, and then we look at our standard deduction, it's that same $33,200. When you subtract this $33,200 from the $129,900, you get the $96,700 threshold where you pay $0 on capital gains distributions. So when we scroll all the way down, we see total tax paid in this scenario is $0, even though they're in the 10% marginal bracket. So let's look a little bit more deeply into the tax report here, and we'll scroll up here. So this is we're going to maximize income. So you'll see here, this is broken down really nice. Total income was $129,900. We have their standard deduction of $33,200. So their taxable income is $96,700. Married filing jointly, their marginal tax bracket would be 10%. So then any dollar of income that they earn over this would be at the 10% rate. And then they have their ordinary dividends and their capital gains structure here. So we know because they're taking no money out from an ordinary income standpoint, they're not collecting Social Security, they're not collecting any money from their IRAs, they're also not collecting anything from like a side job. We know that they're paying $0 in ordinary income tax because they're not falling, because they don't have a dollar of income to report in this ordinary income bucket. So when we scroll down and then we look at the long-term capital gains bracket that they're in, we know that they're realizing $96,700 worth of taxable income. That's their overall income less that standard deduction. But that is the upper threshold of the 0% bracket, meaning that they're going to pay $0 on this $96,700. The other thing that we're maximizing for is the IRMA charges that I had mentioned earlier in the video. This is right here. As long as you have modified adjusted gross income of less than $212,000, you pay the baseline price for Medicare Part B and then your plan premium for Part D. I'm not going to dive too deep into there, but just know that we're not penalizing this couple from an IRMA surcharge standpoint as well. So this is a beautiful thing. We know that because of everything they're doing, they're paying $0 in total tax. They're pulling out the maximum that they can from an income standpoint. If they wanted to take a nice trip or buy a car or maybe put a down payment on a vacation home, something like that, that they have extra income now to do it that they're not paying taxes on. So they're literally getting an extra almost $60,000 of income tax-free than what they actually need. So that's what they're doing under the maximize income approach. So let's talk a little bit about it from the other approach, which is to maximize your backdoor Roth. So we're all the way in the right-hand column here under scenario 3. with the same exact facts as the previous two patterns: $3,500 in taxable interest, $6,000 in total dividends, $5,000 of those are qualified. But something's happening here that's a little bit different. We have a Roth conversion of $28,700 because that's the maximum that they can convert before they're going to start paying income tax on the money converted. We also know that because the upper limit of what they can pull out from a taxable income standpoint to the standard deduction is $96,700, we know that they can take out $91,700 from a long-term capital gain standpoint and still pay nothing in tax. So this does two things. It helps them to maximize their conversion of $28,700. And I'm going to click into this here because I just want to show you, we want to maximize the husband's conversion first because he's a little bit older. You always want to maximize the older spouse first. Or if there's a spouse who has a shorter life expectancy, you also want to take priority of maximizing theirs first as well. But we're just going to do it with the older spouse here to simplify the example. So they're coming up with the same exact total income number when you add in the long-term capital gains and the Roth conversion, but they're doing a tax-free conversion of their IRA funds, moving them all to Roth. They can be very aggressive with these funds now because we know this is the last bucket they'll touch, or they're going to pass it on to their kids or some charity that they care about. So we're maximizing for future income here as well, not just current income. But we're going to end up in the same exact spot, the $129,700, as we did in the maximized income example. And just to show you how this maths out, there's the same standard or itemized deduction, $33,200, taxable income is $96,700. We know that's the upper threshold for capital gains, so we don't have to worry about paying capital gains tax. So total tax paid is $0. Let's look into the tax report for this one now, for the maximizing the back door, just to simplify this. So we know that we have $129,900 in total income. Here's the deductions of $33,200, taxable income is $96,700. We're in the same marginal bracket, average rate, all of that good stuff. And the capital gains is slightly different than what it was in the last example. It's only $91,700, but that's because we have an additional income of $28,000 or so for the backdoor Roth conversion, but we also have the same dividend structure. But we know because of the standard deduction, we're not above this threshold here, so we're paying $0 in ordinary income tax. And we also know because we have taxable qualified income of $96,700, we're at the 0% tax here as well. So there's no capital gains tax that we're paying here either. We're in the same exact position for Medicare surcharges, and this client has effectively converted almost $30,000 of income from traditional to Roth that'll be tax-free to them down the line. So now you're starting to see why it's so important to plan tax-wise. So I hope now by seeing everything that we just rolled through, you see the value of planning. Do we want to just plan for meeting our needs, or do we want to plan to maximize income where we could spend a little bit more tax-free in retirement, or maximize for our future by doing Roth conversions? And this is why it's so important to engage a financial planner, because oftentimes when I meet with clients like this, they're doing it right from the standpoint of meeting their needs, but they're not optimizing the overall picture. And often when you optimize, you end up with a better output than what you would have if you just would have maximized for what you needed. We want to optimize, not maximize. That's the difference here. And that's where a good financial planner comes into play. So what we just walked through is a relatively straightforward retirement distribution strategy plan, but the real world is often more complex. We need to account for things like Social Security and future required minimum distributions and dozens of other factors when we optimize a plan. But it does illustrate a key point. Knowing how to use the tax code to your advantage when it comes to taking income from your accounts can give you over $100,000 of income tax-free in retirement. And that is what a good planner will do for you. We've seen firsthand plans where coordinating withdrawals this way saves clients 6 figures in lifetime taxes. Think about that. Over $100,000 in lifetime taxes saved just by coordinating a withdrawal strategy like we did in the last part of the video. And the peace of mind that comes from this is even better, because you're not just guessing, you're adjusting. You know when you're on track, you know when it's okay to spend more, you know when it's okay to pull back or when you're going to have to pull back because of market conditions. And that's what a great retirement plan would give you. That's what having a good withdrawal strategy will give you. And that's why it's so important. So if you're now wondering how to withdraw from your retirement accounts the smart way, you just found out a combination of guardrails and tax smart withdrawal planning. If you want help building your own strategy or want to see if your current strategy is costing you too much in taxes, book a free consultation with me in the link via the description below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I just saved you a couple $100,000, and I'll see you in the next video.